Kyla, it's so good to have you on. Kyla is actually an old friend who we haven't been in so much touch the last few years, but we have been on Facebook. I knew Kyla when she was running the incredibly delicious Madeline's cherry pie and ice cream on DuPont. And Kyla, you were supportive of my last mayoral campaign, and this time when I made my announcement, you responded with all these ideas. You were like, oh, well, we're going to have this and we're going to have this here and you could do this. Like you had so much creative energy and you have so much knowledge around, food and the joy that we can get from food. So I thought Kyla would be an incredible person to have on, and I'd love to hear your ideas and your vision and your experience. And I know you're living much of the time in England, but you still come back to Toronto regularly. So we'll be able to hear about your path in a little question 3. But we'll start right now, Kyla, with well, first of all, thank you for coming.
Thank you. And if I can just jump in to say how excited I am, and the first thing that comes out of my mouth whenever I'm speaking about you is that you are the person to get things done. And that is what I mean, there's so many things I'm excited about your campaign, but I really honestly believe that. And I wish you success in this endeavor because it's massive. It's so important, and you're so the right person. So yeah, I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you so much, Kyla. Thank you. And if anyone knows about how to get things done, it's you. So I'm going to really take that as a vote of confidence. So let's start with, what's your experience? What's your perspective when it comes to challenges in Toronto, from your own experience here?
Well, I've been a bit of a fly on the wall, so I don't want to purport to know exactly what's going on in this city. I've spent more time in England during lockdown than I did in Canada, but I certainly felt really connected to all of it, and I really feel like, how can I say this, that Toronto is a city that's really struggled, and I think it struggled more than maybe people even thought it would. We took for granted some systems. We took for granted, that we live in this great country with a lot of social welfare policies. And I think that what Toronto is ready for someone to do is kind of, my expression was, shake out the rugs. And do a big cleanup and start fresh, because that's what I think. I think that's really necessary.
And are there any things that you see particularly, and it doesn't have to be in the last 2 years. It could be even when you were, running Madeline's, or when you were living more, spending a lot more time in Toronto. Like, was there anything that you would say, oh, you know what, that could be done better, or I wish this would be, or, did you notice anything on your last trips where you felt like, So what would you like to shake out of that rug?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm so proud of Toronto. I'm always telling people where I'm from exactly, and the thing that I love to hear is that the world's perspective of Toronto is that it's clean. It is that it's perfect. It is that it's this sort of wonderful city, and I know it ranks so high in world lists. My experience living there was, I've always said that Toronto is one of the best places in the world to eat, because we have some of the most international cuisine made by newcomers and first generation Canadians using authentic ingredients and with Canadian health standards and safety standards.
Yes.
So I think that's something that I've always bragged about Toronto, is it's a great city to eat in. And I still hold that true. And I know that restaurants have suffered so much. And we kind of, for years being a part of the industry, I really prided myself in knowing that I could get any ingredient anytime from anywhere in the world. I just had to ask the right person, and we literally had the world at our fingertips. And I think that was probably one of my favorite things about Toronto. And it certainly made the transition to London, England a lot easier, because there was a lot of familiarity in international cuisine. So moving out of my home comfort zone, I could move here and find it too.
Yes.
What I took for granted was the people of Toronto. The day I moved to Toronto as a city, I moved from Ottawa. I went to university in Ottawa, and I grew up in Omemee, Ontario. So very small town girl, lived on a lake. Went to school with 12 friends in Downeyville, and the first day I moved to Toronto, my mom was helping me move from Ottawa.
Uh-huh.
And my next door neighbor in High Park on Evelyn Avenue made his sons, who were like 17, 18-year-old boys at the time, help me unpack. And I was like, wow, like I thought Toronto was this big mysterious city that was going to be isolating, coming from Ottawa, that's got a bit of a small town vibe, as our capital. And I was blown away. And that's kind of always been the way it is. Like, I feel like Torontonians know their neighbors, and that's something that I took for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you're answering the question about the challenges with strengths, like with what you see with opportunities. And I've had a couple of other guests do that. They've kind of turned my question on its head and said, you know what, there's so much that's great about Toronto, and you're so right. And it's much easier to kind of draw attention to what's not working than it is to hold up what's amazing. And Toronto, I think that is, if I would interject a challenge into that, all that you've said, it's just that, like you say, that taking it for granted. And it is pretty miraculous that we have that breadth of cuisine, that we have that neighborhood connection. I mean, not everybody has it in their own neighborhood, but a lot of people do. And it's an amazing thing. And so taking it for granted, it can mean you can risk losing it somewhat. So it's good to have you highlight that, we can also not take it for granted.
And I think that's something that, no one, globally was prepared for what we've been through in the last few years. But my feeling, and again, this is just a feeling I get when I visit home, when I talk, on Zoom calls to my family and my friends, is I feel like there's still a lot of anxiety in Toronto that I've never seen in my life. Living there, I felt like it was a confident city full of confident people, very busy people, but confident people. That was always my experience of Torontonians. Mm-hmm. And to see people struggling, and to see people still trying to figure it out. Where I live in a city that declared itself fully open many months ago. We won't get into that politics of why, but it just, the doors were flung back open. And, London has its own challenges with people not returning to work and things like that. But I feel like in Toronto, all these great qualities that we took for granted, there's still, I think that people need someone they can trust, and somebody who will guide them through the next 4 years that may be very difficult, because not just the hospitality industry that I know, I feel like probably most industries have turned themselves upside down. If we talk about like people transitioning to working from home, and what does that mean? It means that our localized communities change. We need a leader who can make sure that the streets are still maintained properly in neighborhoods that are probably getting more traffic than they used to, because people are changing where they work, where, focus was on downtown core, like financial centers or outlying areas where there were, technology parks and things like that. Right. And we're finding out a lot of things can just happen globally, right? And from your own desk.
Right.
So I think that what Toronto needs is somebody who can confidently, be a guide,
right? Well, I think you're right about, I think I have noticed that to varying degrees, that sort of uncertainty or anxiety or perhaps fear, that one of the things I love so much about Toronto is our restaurant scene, our music scene, our art scene, and so much of that depends on connection. And depends on people being able to connect in whatever way they feel they can. And so I would love us to be able to anxiety is a real thing. And of course, it was a scary, scary time and continues to be for many people. And so, but recognizing that we don't want to lose that amazing connection that we have with each other, that was so powerful in Toronto, still is, and will only become more. So if you had a vision, Kyla, of, what you would love, like, let's just say the next time you came, we'll create this, like, and what would one aspect of Toronto, whether it's food, whether it's neighbors, whether it's whatever it is, would you love to imagine? What would it feel like or look like?
Okay, so please remember that I am a chef and a chef first when I say this, and I like a tidy place. I don't necessarily mean shaking out the rugs in a deeper political sense. I mean it quite literally. I wish that people would clean up the city. I made a proposition, and I love that you had already acted on it in your own life, that Toronto, one of the big chains who uses a lot of paper cups should sponsor a great cleanup. I mean, we used to do that as kids, that all the school kids would go out and pick up garbage. And I think that we need that. We might need some more positive messaging around, like, we have great bus shelters and things. Maybe, wash off the graffiti and put up signs about Pride in Toronto, and maybe have something international. Like, everyone I talk to here thinks Toronto is the cleanest city in the world. And having spent time, I just spent 8 weeks in downtown Toronto, and I was a little bit nervous, to be honest with you, and a little bit disappointed. So I think that some sort of initiative to not just clean up our backyards, but clean up our front yards.
Yes.
Clean up our streets, tidy up. I know construction was like, everything was sort of at a standstill. But I think now, I think it would be really cathartic for people to go out there in groups, whatever those groups are, and physically clean up the city. And I feel like people really, really tried to support local restaurants, local businesses. I see that there's a lot of home-based entrepreneurship happening in the city. And I think it's a delicate balance. I think it's about exploring and finding the best fit for that. Because I think it's great to have home-based businesses. I mean, I'm in the baking industry, and I know that baking, like, it's tough. You mentioned Madeline's, I loved it. It was gorgeous. It was wonderful. And it was expensive to run, and for good reasons. But I do know that there's a lot of people who are skilled bakers that maybe couldn't afford a beautiful storefront on Bathurst Street, but now can bake from home where they couldn't before.
Yes.
And I think the rules have changed a bit. We need to fact check it exactly how much they've changed, but what we call cottage industry over here, that you can bake from home and sell your pies, I couldn't do when I had my business. I had to be in a legal kitchen. That's great, but not if it means empty storefronts on our main streets.
Right.
We've got to find a way to fill the storefronts and allow people to thrive.
Yes. I love that. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And first of all, I love the tidy kitchen approach to the city, because as a chef, how it's not a frill to have a tidy kitchen. It's health and welfare. It's the quality of the food. It's the morale. It's everything.
But there you go, right? So wouldn't a tidy city be the same thing?
Absolutely.
It's stressful to see people, whether it's your choice or whether it's their choice or their circumstance of life, to be living in the local parks. It created anxiety for me. I'll just say that, I'll own it. I felt very anxious looking out the window of where I was staying and seeing more than 30 people with semi-permanent residences in the park right in front of me, because I believe as Canadians, we have the right to more than that.
Right. Yeah. And I think, just going back to garbage on our streets and sponsored cleanups and that sort of thing, that affects every one of us. As long as you go outside, seeing an overflowing garbage can or plastic bottles in the gutter or whatever it is, especially plastic bags in trees in the park, like there are things that just really kind of dampen your experience of life, of daily life, that if we not just cleaned it up, but also looked at preventing it. And we often can point the finger at business and say, why do you have styrofoam packages? Why do you have this? Why do you have that? And well, first of all, we buy it, so we want the convenience too. But second of all, let's work with, rather than just telling them they should do it, and businesses already have so much cost on their shoulders, and to tell them to add a new one is hardly fair, especially when consumers aren't willing to pay that extra price. So how can we work with them and, again, take responsibility ourselves on preventing garbage? And then, yeah, absolutely, the state that people live in, I don't know that encampments are really beneficial for anybody. Like, as you say, you feel stressful, and I'm not so sure it's a wonderful way to live. And certainly when there's no toilet facilities, when there's, no garbage facilities, there's so much we could do with regard to making our city a great place to live for everyone, and a great place to look at. And yes, let's keep up that image. We do have a wonderful international image. Do we want people to come and be disappointed or surprised? Or do they want them to say, wow, Toronto's even better than I heard? So thank you for that. Yeah, imagining that vision. And do you want to take us a little bit on your path, Kyla, of what you've done with your life to make this more connected world, this tidier kitchen, in quotes? You don't need to tell us your cleaning practices, but yeah, just more your approach to life and vibrancy and all that sort of thing.
We don't have enough time for my cleaning practice, I'll say that. However, and there's a lot of people who've ever worked with me that are laughing right now. But the reality is, I think it always, first of all, we know it starts in the home. It starts in, I think, awareness and knowledge. I remember the first day, and I think so many Torontonians hopefully share my joy, the first day that composters landed on our doorsteps. Yeah. It was like the best moment. I mean, I grew up in the country. We had acres and acres of property. We had composters for everything. One was just for leaves and everything you could compost, right? We produced almost no garbage living in the country. Living in the city, it was so frustrating not to have that. And I don't know if you remember, but I had a green cone in the backyard. Probably wasn't supposed to, but back in the day, I hacked the raccoons in Hyde Park because of me. But then to all of a sudden have the city take it over, and take action. And then the day that, and this is where I love the trajectory, is to find out that actually now they're creating biofuel. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like they actually power the trucks for picking up garbage collection with the biofuel they create from the compost.
Wow.
In Toronto. And I think that's amazing. And I'm proud to say that I just got a composter here in London.
Oh, great. Your own individual one. Yeah.
2021.
Yeah.
I was very surprised. I actually thought London would be way further ahead in terms of waste reduction than they are, but we got composters. So the city is starting to take up the charge. I don't know if it's my letters that they answered or what, but here we are. So we're starting here where Toronto is what are we, 20 years ahead of that, right?
Right.
So, so when it comes down to that, I can tell we're both blue in the face that we need to reduce our waste. We need to only buy the groceries we're going to use to make the meal. We're busy. I know. There's hockey and there's soccer and there's music and there's school and there's homework and everything. But if you can make the daily shop part of it and reduce food waste, it just changes life. Yeah. It's just, so for me, tidying up means just literally keeping less in your fridge, eating everything. And when it's all done, buying something new. Like for me, that's what it means. It means separating your garbage best as possible. But most of all, when you're when you're in the grocery store and there's tomatoes and they're wrapped in a nice, beautiful package with some fancy labeling and some exotic name on it, great. And then there's some tomatoes just sitting there and you pick it up and it smells good and there's no packaging. Please choose that one.
Yes.
That's the kind of tidying up I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and start asking your grocer, your local stores to bring in ingredients for you. You know, like I do all my shopping by walking. I can't have a car in London. I mean, I can't even imagine driving here. And I love that because in Toronto, I drove everywhere.
Yeah.
So asking, and I ask my grocer, oh, could you get me this? You know, we're still working on good maple syrup, but we're getting there. And to me, that's what it is. And it's that bringing that community back. Like that's the kind of tidying I'm talking about, if that makes sense.
It does. And how about in your professional life? I just think you have such an interesting story about, you know, what you were doing when I knew you and ate your delicious pies and and now you're the Great Canadian Baking Show and I know you do work with George Brown College. So tell us, how do you infuse that into your professional life? How have you, seen where food is wasted or found innovative solutions or told, suggested to people, oh, you could try this?
Well, I'm pretty quiet. So yeah, I started a tiny little retail cafe in 2004, Madeline's Cherry Pie and Ice Cream. We loved being where we were. We loved the neighborhood. We loved our customers. We had people coming from all over the place to visit us. And we actually we started out only ever making things that were in season. Mm-hmm. And I have so many stories of that where it was a real focus of education. It was unintentional. I actually just really didn't understand why people wanted peach pies in the winter because they just don't taste as good. It was actually not that I had this great soapbox. Like it actually didn't take me long to figure out it was a great soapbox. but at the beginning, like I just baked what my mom taught me, and that you make rhubarb in these months, and then I'm pausing because rhubarb season here is February, so I have to remember. Yeah, in Toronto, it's quite a bit later, but it's that whole thing. There's nothing better than a tomato that's ripened in the garden. So you don't always have to eat bruschetta in the middle of winter when the tomato has no flavor. Just wait. Make something else then. So that was the whole thing. Madeline's became this great experience to really focus on great ingredients and using them when they're at their best. And then, fortunately, I got to do a little teaching and sharing that knowledge. And because of my experience as a purchaser, that's something I've continued on. And I still teach purchasing classes at George Brown. And I'm really proud to be a part of the Dixon Hall program, because it's really for helping people that are reinterpreting their career or starting over, or maybe just entering the workforce, but from a position where they haven't had other experiences. Okay. And giving them an opportunity and letting them know that working in hospitality doesn't just mean being a waiter or a waitress. It doesn't just mean working long, late night shifts. I mean, being a purchaser means you can make sustainable, responsible, important decisions for big organizations. You can help them choose biodegradable coffee cup lids, and that's your job and your responsibility as a purchaser. So I'm really happy to be able to say that after working in the industry for 35 years and taking my little country knowledge, like things that I just thought were like, we didn't have, we did have a Tim Hortons. It was actually my first job with the Tim Hortons, but we reused milk bags, we reused everything, and my mom brings me milk bags because they don't have bag milk here. So milk bags are like the best storage containers. Yeah. If you have like a half a dozen milk bags and a few wax, do you know what do you call them? The wax covers. Like I haven't used plastic wrap in 10 years. Right. Yeah, it's not necessary. And I know there was a period of time when the pandemic started and we weren't sure about cross-contamination and touch surfaces. Yes. But I think that we've discovered that it's okay to use a portable mug. Reusable, reusable mug. Yeah, it's okay. That wasn't the cause. and it wasn't, you know, cross-contamination wasn't as big of a risk as we thought, as long as we wash the cup.
Yeah.
You know, so that I that's the kind of stuff is for me. I'm at a point in my career and I'm surrounded by these amazing people. And there's a couple of organizations that I'm looking down to make sure I say things right. But there are organizations that are trying to help with education. And, you know, we took a side step, but we're coming back. And for me, like my whole path has been about loving food, eating naturally, eating healthy food. And then now I get to teach people about how to do it and how to purchase it. You know, and for people coming into the industry, start here. Yes. You know, like I started in the 80s, like we were, you know, we were all about like shelf life and packaging and, you know, whatever, but start here now, you know, think sustainably, think locally. What can you do as a great local menu? FoodShare, great organization. They've been helping people with food. There's some great chefs on board with it, and doing educational courses to help people have fun cooking as families, have fun cooking at home. You know, so this is the kind of, you know, this is the kind of thing I'd love to see Toronto really, really support. Another one here is also called Homestead TO, and it's about urban farming.
Yes.
And like being a country girl, I have always had an urban farm. Sometimes I didn't get a lot out of it, you know, but actually it's like the bees. I don't know if you know that city bees are actually more productive than country bees.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I learned this at the Royal York Hotel because of the apiaries that they have on the roof.
Okay.
And they said those apiaries, actually, they produce more honey than some of the country farms.
Wow.
So yeah, they're really productive bees. So city bees are hard workers too. And, you know, and I think we can do a lot with urban farming. And I think you talk about it too. Like imagine if you went down the street and all you could smell were tomatoes ripening in the sun.
Yeah.
You know, and you could see somebody out in their front yard, like grabbing a watermelon and cutting it open, you know, it's real, like it's realistic. Don't you think?
I do. Well, and I think you saw on Instagram, I put a post with me next to this giant zucchini. It was crazy. It was the size of my leg. And just that, I think that, and like you say, with the pandemic, when there were sort of supply chain issues and that kind of thing, to me, that's brought into stark relief the need to have local food. We take it for granted in Toronto. We can get, you know, a coconut from Hawaii or a pomegranate from Peru, or, you know, amazing rice from all over the place. Like we take that for granted, but it's not a sure thing, you know. So what is a sure thing though is if we have a serviceberry tree, I'm looking at it in my front yard, that will have fruit in June. If we have wild spinach, it's called lamb's quarters, we can eat that. The plantain we can eat, and we can grow incredible amounts of food. And I love that there's apiaries on top of Royal York. I did not know that.
You have to go. It's so cool.
I would love to. So I think I love, you know, how your professional path is also related so closely to your personal upbringing, and that the lessons that we have at home can be put in professionally. And my last question will then be for people who love this, you know, what you've offered, these thoughts about eating seasonally, appreciating, you know, that tomato now, and, you know, maybe you're having, you know, stocking up on maple syrup all winter or whatever, and a tidy city, like which tidy means cared for, right? It's not just about being sterile, it's about cared for. So how could people, like, first of all, connect with you? Because I'm sure people are going to want to, not everyone on my podcast may know about where you are. I'd love for them to be able to connect with you. You're so amazing and interesting. And secondly, how would you suggest people could, in their own lives, like, create this Toronto with such abundance, with such connection, with such care?
Well, you know, I certainly would say that that, I mean, I can shamelessly say that coming in the fall will be season 6 of the Great
Yes.
Canadian Baking Show. It is another great year. The bakers are amazing, and that's all I'm allowed to say, because I want to tell you everything we made and ate, and it was absolutely wonderful. But being a judge on this show it's so beautiful, because first of all, I get to be at the CFC, so it's just north of the Canadian Film Center. Is a beautiful piece of property just north of Sunnybrook Hospital. It is beautiful. There are fruit trees, there are nut trees, there are we were eating mulberries, and when they were ripe, as they were ripening.
Wow.
There's raspberry bushes. It's a gorgeous piece of property to be on, and a great place to film a baking show and to be inspired, and that's open to the public. We have these great spaces. So there are organizations like Not Far From the Tree, and they pick fruit. So if you see, again, because I'm from the west end of the city, and there are so many fruit trees all over the place. And yes, you're allowed to pick the fruit from them. Right. Again, if somebody stops you and says don't, you can say, well, Kyla Kennaley told me I was allowed to. Yeah. Maybe just make sure, not on your neighbor's lawn, but there are local fruit trees. But better to do it with a group of friends who have ladders and safety equipment and things like that. And an organization like Not Far From the Tree does have that. They work as groups, so that's a great one. I mentioned FoodShare. That's a great one, especially if you need a little help around what to buy, or you have trouble, getting ingredients. In Canada, we all deserve to eat healthy.
Yes.
That we're born into a country of privilege. We have enough acres to feed everyone, but it doesn't mean, like you said, that we must have fresh coconut every day. Right. It means that we need to look at what actually is Canadian, and it's okay if you don't know. Yes. I was whatever 40 something years old when I learned that pawpaws grow in Canada. Yeah. I mean, and that's to say something that sounds exotic, but it grows here. If you grew up in the country, we've got rhubarb and fiddleheads, but beyond zucchini. but it's okay not to know, but we have the internet. So do a search Toronto food education. George Brown. I'm so proud to be connected with George Brown and teach courses there. And if you just want to take a course about purchasing, or you just want to take a course about tea or wine, it's still education. I mean, we have a beautiful wine region. Many beautiful wine regions. I shouldn't say I'm sort of fixating on one, because I have so many friends that moved out to Prince Edward County, but we have so many great wine regions. Yes. I used to go and buy all my fruit from Cherry Lane Farm, and Bizjacks. You can just drive up to these farms, take the kids. What a fabulous, fabulous day trip. And educate yourself. But if you don't know, there are organizations that can help you, so yeah. And I would do my best. Please reach out to me. I'm on social media. It's easy to find me. I don't know if you put up a link or something like that, but I love to talk about food, and I've had the opportunity to spend my whole life immersed in it. And there are millions of people, and there's somebody who I really want to mention, and I have two stories actually, but one of them is Joshna Maharaj. And she is somebody who is a mentor to me. She is a passionate food advocate. She wrote a book called Take Back the Tray, and she had a beautiful quote. And she said, Torontonians need leadership that understands the importance of food security in urban spaces. Mm-hmm. It's okay not to know what to grow, but if you want to know, I really believe the information is, it's so close. Just ask.
Yes. Yeah. You said you had two stories.
Yes. Oh, the other story is the power of a name, because I really had to practice Joshna's name. I've called her Joshna for 20 years. And then I was like, I don't really know how to say her last name. So Joshna, I apologize if I got it wrong. It looks like that to me. And I hope we're friends for 20 more years so we can keep practicing. Sarah Kleimenhag. Yeah.
Yes, you got it. You got it.
Okay. I only know this. I've known you for 20 years and I have 20 more years to practice now because you just did a beautiful interview in Spanish and I'm so proud of you. And I had no idea that you spoke Spanish, but I also didn't know you don't pronounce the A. So
well,
I was so happy to learn that. I've been pronouncing the A for forever.
Well, you're not the only one. And even within my own family, like my dad and his brother, some people do pronounce the A, some people don't pronounce the A. And actually, my last mayoral campaign, even though I've grown up not pronouncing the A, I just thought it's too complicated. Who knows what a silent A is? I'm just going to say Climenhaga. So it is absolutely logical for people to think it's Climenhaga, but that's how I think of myself, Climenhaga. But just one other thing about that is I had a guest on my podcast, Rocco Ashenpong, who is running for council in the city. And I asked him how, am I pronouncing Ashenpong correctly? And he said it's H-M-Pong. I just said it wrong again. But he said, I don't correct people because new pronunciations give new life to a word. And it was so beautiful. And I thought, it totally changes how I perceive it now if someone says my name, because they've come up with a lot of interesting pronunciations of my last name. Now it's like, what's new? What did they create that's new? And I love that idea because language is always evolving, pronunciations are always evolving. My name has changed throughout the years, like of my ancestors. So the power of the name, it's interesting. But it is if I have the opportunity, I'll say, let's try out the silent A for once. Well, Kyla, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
I loved it. I loved it. And it's a powerful name that you have for such a powerful person. And it's really it's your beautiful city. I mean, you have such a great family legacy in the city, and everything I've ever seen about you is just how proud you are and raising your family in this city and understanding it. And I think that's what it takes. I think that we need someone we can trust, and somebody who's going to think and somebody who's going to ask questions and find new solutions, and listen to people like Rocco. That's a very new perspective. I will always teach people, oh no, keep working till you learn it, but wow, that was powerful. And wow. So you've blown me away again. Thank you.
That's the benefit of having so many people on this podcast, is to hear so many excellent ideas. And what another joyful episode to have with you on it, Kyla. So thank you very much. And
well, I wish you all the best. I learned how to do this. It's supposed to be a heart. I'm trying. There you go. Yeah, all the best to you, and keep me posted on everything.
I will. And I'm looking forward to watching you on Family Feud, everybody. Kyla's going to be on Family Feud.
That's coming up too. We just did Family Feud. Again, I can't tell you anything about it, but our charity is Water First. It's a great organization because the focus is on STEM. It's on it's on education first in science and technology, and making sure every Canadian has water that they deserve. So
excellent. Yeah. I will put the link for everything I can into this episode description.
All the best to you.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.